The topic is types of communicable diseases. So, communicable diseases are of various types as they are caused by bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and worms. So, these are the types of microorganisms that cause the communicable diseases or the infectious diseases. Now, let us read about vector. A vector is an animal that transmits pathogen from one person to another. So vector acts as an agent as it transmits the pathogens which cause the communicable disease from one person to another. For example, female Anopheles mosquito, it transmits the malarial parasite from one person to another. So if a person has malaria, female Anopheles mosquito will bite that person and will transmit the malarial parasite from that person to other person who is healthy, and it spreads the malaria. Some other vector-borne diseases and their vectors are dengue or yellow fever. So it is spread by Aedes mosquito from one person to another. Typhus is spread by bedbug. Plague is spread by rat flea. Sleeping sickness is spread by testis flies. Scabies is spread by mite, and cholera, typhoid are spread by housefly. So this figure shows the common vectors. So this is the Aedes mosquito which acts as a vector for dengue or yellow fever. This is rat flea which acts as vector for plague, and this is housefly which acts vector for cholera and typhoid. Now let us read in detail about the bacterial diseases. Some common communicable bacterial diseases, their mode of transmission, symptoms, prevention, and cure are given in the table. Now let us read about some common communicable bacterial diseases that occur. First disease is pneumonia. The mode of transmission of pneumonia is through air or by sputum. Sputum is a type of fluid that is produced by the throat or the lungs. Symptoms of pneumonia are infection of lungs and high fever will occur. Now pneumonia can be cured by the antibiotic, which is penicillin injections are given. Second bacterial disease is diphtheria, which occurs through air or by sneezing and coughing, which is known as droplet infection. So it can easily transfer from one person to another. Symptoms of diphtheria are that it infects children between 2 to 5 years of age, and it affects lining of nose, throat, and tonsils, which is often fatal. The disease can be prevented by vaccination by triple vaccine, which is known as DPT. It provides protection against three diseases. First is diphtheria, second is pertussis or whooping cough, and tetanus. The third disease is whooping cough, which is also known as pertussis. The mode of transmission of this disease is through air or by discharge from throat during the coughing. The symptoms are that it infects children and affects the respiratory tract. The prevention can be done through vaccination of the triple vaccine, that is again DPT. The next disease is tuberculosis, which is also known as TB. The mode of transmission is through air, dust, sputum, that is the droplet infection, by coughing, sneezing, or spitting. The symptoms are that it generally affects the lungs, that is the respiratory tract. Phlegm and coughing is seen in this case. The prevention can be done through the vaccine, which is known as BCG, Bacillus of Calmette-Guerin. Now this is on the name of the scientist who discovered this vaccine. So this vaccination can be given to prevent this disease, and antibiotic streptomycin is used to treat this disease. The next disease is cholera, which transmits through contaminated food and water. It infects the intestine, loose motions and vomiting, and it also leads to dehydration. The prevention can be done through proper sanitation, keeping food covered, washing hands properly. So we should maintain a good hygiene to prevent these diseases. And anti-cholera injections are also given. The next disease is typhoid. It transfers through food and water that is contaminated by flies or sewage. The symptoms are that it causes intestinal fever, which rises in the afternoon. Reddish eruptions on chest and abdomen are also seen in this case. The prevention can be done through proper sanitation, use of boiled water, control of flies, keeping food and cut fruit covered, and also through the vaccination. Now let us read about the viral diseases. Some common viral diseases, mode of transmission, symptoms, and their prevention and cure are given in the table. Now let us read about some common viral diseases. First disease is common cold. The mode of transmission is through droplet infection or contact with articles soiled with nasal discharge. The symptoms are that nasal discharge will occur, headache and mild fever will occur because it affects the upper respiratory tract of our body. The prevention and cure can be done through by avoiding contact with the affected person, rest to get well soon, and no medicine is present for viral infection. In case of bacterial infection, antibiotics are present, but in case of viral infection, no medicines are generally present. The next disease is influenza. It also transmits through droplet infection or contact with the personal articles of the patient. The symptoms of this disease are runny or stuffy nose, chills, high fever, and body pain. It also affects the upper respiratory tract of our body. Prevention can be done through by avoiding the contact with the affected person, rest to get well soon, and no medicine is present for the viral infection. The next disease is mumps. It transmits through person to person contact. Virus is present in the saliva of the infected person. Symptoms are it affects the salivary glands in the person, so there is swelling in the salivary glands that are present below the ear. Headache and high fever will also occur. This disease can be prevented through the vaccine, and gamma globulin protects after the infection. So after infection, gamma globulin are given. The next disease is poliomyelitis. This transmits through droplet infection by fecal matter, and it enters through the nose or mouth and attacks the nerves which are controlling the muscles. Now the symptoms of this disease are fever, headache, vomiting, drowsiness, muscles weaken because the nerves which are controlling the muscles, the virus attacks them and become paralyzed. This disease is common in children. Now this disease can be prevented through the immunization through polio vaccine. 3 doses are given 6 weeks apart that provide lifetime immunization. Next disease is jaundice, which is also known as infectious hepatitis. It transmits through contaminated food and water. The virus will enter the liver and eyes, skin, and urine will turn yellow. Prevention and cure can be done through rest, light food, and proper medication. The next disease is rabies, which is also known as hydrophobia. As in this disease, fear of water will occur. The mode of transmission is through the bite of rabbit, dog, or cat, and virus is present in the saliva of the infected animal. So the symptoms of this disease are that virus affects the brain and nervous system of the body and drinking becomes painful. Fear from water will also occur, that is why it is known as hydrophobia. The prevention can be done through immunization of dogs as it is transferring from the bite of rabid dog to a healthy person. Next is to wash the wound with soap and warm water. If there is any dog bite, the wound should be washed with the soap and warm water and take anti-rabies injections. Now let us read about the protozoan diseases that are caused by protozoa. First is amoebiasis, which is also called amoebic dysentery, which is caused by ant amoeba histolytica, which lives in the lower part of small intestine and in large intestine. The parasite causes discharge of blood and mucus with the stool. It spreads through food that is contaminated by flies or by contaminated water. The next disease that is caused by protozoa is malaria, which is caused by parasitic protozoan, which is known as Plasmodium. So it lives in the RBCs of man. The patient suffers repeated attacks of chill and fever. A healthy person gets infected by the bite of female Anopheles mosquito. So female Anopheles mosquito acts as a vector of this disease and who has sucked the blood of the infected person. So the female Anopheles mosquito will bite infected person and will transmit the protozoa from the infected person to the healthy person. This protozoa lives in the RBCs of man and the patient will suffer severe attacks of chill and fever. Now let us read about diseases caused by worms. So the first disease is teniasis, that is caused by a flatworm Taenia. Its body hangs freely in the intestine and absorbs food from the host. Infection spreads by eating improperly cooked measly pork or beef. So, this disease is caused by a flatworm which is known as tinea, and it absorbs the food from the intestine of the host. Now, the second disease is ascaris, that is caused by roundworm ascaris. It is an intestinal parasite that affects the intestine, that absorbs the host digested food. It is common in children the world over and is transmitted through food or water contaminated with ascaris eggs. So, it is transmitted through the food or water that is contaminated, which has the ascaris egg. Those who will consume that food will get the infection. The third disease is elephantiasis, which is also known as filariasis. It is caused by filaria worm or Wucheria bankrupti. So it is transmitted by the bite of female Culex mosquito, which acts as a vector. The worm blocks lymph vessels and cause enlargement or swelling of the leg. So as we can see in this figure, which shows the legs of a patient having elephantiasis or filariasis, the worm will block the lymph vessels which are present on the lower side of the body, and that will lead to the enlargement or the swelling in the legs. It can also lead to swelling of breast in females and scrotum in males. Legs become large and elephant-like, hence it is known as elephantiasis. So we can see in this figure that the legs have become large due to the swelling and they become elephant-like. That is why this is known as elephantiasis.